Good to see you.
Good afternoon. This subcommittee will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess at any time pursuant to Committee Rule 2E and House Rule 11. The chair announces that she may postpone roll call votes. Pursuant to notice, the Subcommittee on Space and Aeronautics meets to consider the following measure. H.R. 5666, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration Authorization Act of 2020. Good afternoon. Today we're marking up H.R. 5666, the bipartisan NASA Authorization Act of 2020. And I want to start by thanking and expressing appreciation to my colleagues and the original co-sponsors of this bill. Ranking Member Babin, it's been a pleasure to work with you on this subcommittee, and Full Committee Chairwoman Johnson and Full Committee Ranking Member Lucas. Thank you for your co-sponsorship and support and the work in ensuring we started with a bipartisan bill. This bill is the product of bipartisan across-the-aisle effort to support NASA and the nation with a strong and sustainable and ambitious space program to set NASA up for success in the long term. In the long term, pushing the boundaries of human space exploration is hard. It requires long-term planning, funding, and a clear rationale for the mission. Getting to Mars is a bold and long-term endeavor that future Congresses and administrations must continue to carry forward. H.R. 5666 directs the development of plans, funding profiles, and ongoing oversight of the Moon to Mars program. The bill also establishes an independent program analysis and evaluation office to assess the performance and cost estimates. These tools help to provide NASA and Congress the ability to ensure that the program stays on track. In addition, the legislation takes the fiscally responsible approach of setting clear rationale and purpose for those. For too long, NASA's work has suffered from fits and starts of short-term political priorities change. If we are to remain the world's leader in space exploration, NASA needs a long-term sustainable plan that prioritizes transparency, accountability, and effective programmatic management. The NASA Authorization Act of 2020 takes a thoughtful approach to sending Americans to the Moon, Mars, and beyond, an approach that decreases risk and values the stewardship of taxpayer dollars. Our goal is to strengthen America's space program and provide NASA with the framework it needs to develop a sound, evidence-based plan for space exploration. This bill has stimulated considerable debate concerning opportunities for commercial entities in the Moon to Mars program. And I am incredibly glad that the public and stakeholders care so deeply about NASA and our civil space program. But given some of the coverage and questions about the rationale and impact for the contents of the bill, let me be crystal clear. This bill is not about rejecting the Artemis program or delaying humans on the Moon until 2028. In fact, NASA can still work to safely get there sooner. This bill is taking the fiscally responsible approach of focusing this bill is taking the fiscally responsible approach of focusing the Moon efforts on the goal of being the first nation to set foot on Mars. Thus far, NASA has provided little to no details as to what specifically it will do on the Moon and how any Moon activities will be extensible to Mars. This bill does not pick favorites, rather it encourages companies and industry to participate in our nation's civil space program, which is led by NASA. We must empower NASA to achieve the highest probability of success, carrying out its long-stated mission of getting to the Moon and Mars. In order to implement goals as challenging as sending humans to the Moon and Mars, there must be a leader and a body of institutional knowledge that can carry the program forward over decades. NASA is that leader and the backbone of American space exploration. The clear recommendation from our hearings from the impartial expert witnesses is that it is critically important that NASA has insight and oversight into the development of human landing system, including leadership of the endeavor. The most effective means of assuring NASA has the responsibility is the contracting approach with industry. NASA should be the owner of the landing system, not simply a buyer of seats and services. Tom Young from one of our earlier hearings. And General Stafford echoed these thoughts during the same hearing. NASA should have strong insight and oversight of the Moon to Mars program from the first day, and one of the main factors to success of the Gemini and Apollo programs was the fact that astronauts, engineers, and management were deeply involved, working side by side with the contractors from the start. Government responsibility and expertise taking on inherent risk in challenging, cutting-edge missions, including those involving humans, enables the continued development of NASA's world-class workforce and technical capabilities. That skill and capability is what supports the emergence of new industries and a vibrant commercial sector. H.R. 5666 leverages the commercial capabilities where appropriate and establishes the pathways for future emerging opportunities. In closing, I look forward to continuing the work with my colleagues as we advance this bipartisan legislation for NASA and the nation's leadership in space. I urge the subcommittee members to support its passage out of the subcommittee in preparation for markup at the full committee. And now I yield to the ranking member, Mr. Babin.
Thank you, Chairwoman Horn. H.R. 5666, the NASA Authorization Act of 2020, represents a start to advancing our nation's space program. The bill supports the administration's bold mission to return America to the surface of the moon and on to Mars. The bill jumpstarts Artemis with the direction to create a Moon to Mars program office, something the appropriators didn't do and didn't support in the recent omnibus. The bill codifies the goal of returning to the surface of the moon by 2028, something that the Senate was only able to support as a non-binding sense of Congress. And absolutely nothing in this bill inhibits or prohibits NASA from returning to the lunar surface by 2024 if we can. The bill continues support for Orion, the Space Launch System, the Exploration Ground System, and calls for increased flight rates for these critical exploration capabilities, which was a concern expressed by the Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel. The bill also formally authorizes development of a gateway in cislunar space and allows FAR to support missions to the moon and to Mars. Additional developments specifically authorized for the first time in the bill include exploration spacesuits and ISS spacesuit upgrades that leverage the expertise of the Johnson Space Center and a Mars transport vehicle. The bill allows for unfettered lunar resource development and the development of a lunar outpost so long as they are separately accounted for in NASA's budget request, just as many other activities like exploration research and development, advanced exploration capabilities, and space technology work are accounted for at NASA. The bill encourages international and commercial partnerships and even carves out logistics and cargo supply exclusively for commercial providers. Furthermore, it formally codifies the administration's commercial lunar payload services proposal. The bill directs NASA to continue operating the ISS until at least 2028, supports continued progress on commercial crew and cargo to once again launch American astronauts on American rockets from American soil. And this allows NASA to move forward with commercial low Earth development plans. Turning to science, the bill ensures a balanced portfolio of science activities, including the authorization of a new spacecraft to search for dangerous near-Earth asteroids, completion of the James Webb Space Telescope, and other National Academy's decadal survey priorities. Finally, the bill strongly supports NASA's aeronautics, space technology, and education programs. But let me be clear, this is not an ideal bill. It is not the one that I would have even put forward had we been in the majority. But I can count, and the majority would likely have had the votes to get the bill out of committee with or without our support. Through working with the majority, we have significantly strengthened their proposal in a way that fully supports the administration's priority goals laid out in Space Policy Directive 1. I look forward to continuing to work with the majority to incorporate input from all stakeholders, including the administration, as we move forward. It is clear that more work needs to be done to ensure that all stakeholders and members are comfortable going forward. Specifically, the language on human landers could be strengthened to align with the administration's goal of using public-private partnerships and cost sharing. This is the beginning of the process. I look forward to working with my colleagues going forward to ensure that this committee produces a bill that will be acceptable to take to the floor at some point in the future. And I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Babin. We will now consider H.R. 5666, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration Authorization Act of 2020. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 56.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open to amendment at any point. The chair now recognizes the chair of the full committee, Ms. Johnson, to present remarks on the bill.
Thank you very much. Let me acknowledge the presence of the administrator. We're delighted that you're here. And I want to again express my deep appreciation to Chairwoman Horn and Ranking Member Babin for their hard work in crafting the thoughtful and bipartisan NASA authorization bill that we will be considering today. It is a good bill, and I'm proud to be an original co-sponsor. The legislation before us today recognizes the need for a balanced NASA portfolio of programs in human space flight and explorations, space and earth science, aeronautics, technological innovation, and promotion of STEM education. It contains many important provisions to strengthen NASA's role in each of its areas. In that regard, I'm especially pleased by the constructive and clear-eyed approach that Chairwoman Horn and Ranking Member Babin have taken to move NASA's Moon to Mars aspirations from the realm of rhetoric into the serious consideration of what it will actually take to achieve the ambitious national goal of landing humans on Mars. If their efforts have been generated some controversy, it is because they have done the hard work of clarifying what needs to happen if NASA is to reach Mars in a reasonable time period and for a reasonable cost. And I would suggest that no one get too focused on the specific milestone dates proposed in the bill. If NASA is able to get to the moon before 2028, or if it takes longer than 2033 for NASA to orbit Mars, that's okay, and are not precluded by this bill. I am more interested in maximizing the odds of success for this bold undertaking and making it as safe as any human journey into the deep space can be, than I am in having NASA meet arbitrary deadlines. As NASA and its contractor teams undertake this hard work of turning view graphs into hardware and real mission plans, we will know soon enough what is realistically achievable and when. That in itself will be a significant step forward from where we have been to date. I will have more to say about this bill when we consider it in the full committee. In closing, I want to reiterate that Chairwoman Horn and Ranking Member Babin can take pride in what they have produced. We have far too long heard vague pronunciations about America going to the moon and Mars, and about all the wonderful things we can do on the moon. These vague pronouncements are all well and good, but they don't constitute a credible program that will actually get this nation to Mars. To their great credit, Chairwoman Horn and Ranking Member Babin recognize that the technical, programmatical, and budgetary challenges we face in getting to Mars are formidable and will require a laser-like focus to overcome. In addition, they recognize, I think, members on both sides of the aisle would agree with them that there are many important national priorities competing for scarce resources, and funding for the human exploration of Moon and Mars is going to be constrained. That puts a premium on investing in these activities and approaches that have the highest probability of success with minimum complexity. It also means investing only in those human exploration activities and technologies that contribute most directly to achieving our goal of reaching Mars. And NASA or members of this, if NASA or members of this committee want to add nice to have but non-essential lunar other activities, then they need to identify where the money is going to come from. With that, I once again want to say thank you for a very good bill, and I look forward to the approval of this afternoon's markup.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Lucas, to present any remarks on the bill.
Thank you for holding this markup, Chairwoman Horn. Today, the subcommittee will mark up H.R. 5666, the NASA Reauthorization Act of 2020. This markup is one of many steps in the legislative process that will undoubtedly yield a much improved product from what lies before us today. Last March, Vice President Pence announced an ambitious goal to return astronauts to the lunar surface in 5 years. I, along with several of my colleagues on the committee, offered strong support for this goal. NASA subsequently named this effort the Artemis program, and we have seen tremendous progress from NASA towards this goal in the 10 months since the announcement. During the drafting of this bill, I made it clear that my top priority was to ensure that this committee supports the Artemis program and that nothing in the legislation would be a roadblock to NASA putting astronauts on the moon by 2024. I would not have joined this bill as a co-sponsor if I believed it inhibited NASA's efforts to achieve this goal. Rather, I believe this bill provides NASA the necessary authorities to achieve this goal and continue progress towards its long-term goal of sending humans to Mars. This bill provides the infrastructure necessary to achieve the Vice President's goals by maintaining strong support for the Space Launch System and the Orion Crew Module. This bill authorizes the gateway, which would be known as the Gateway to Mars under the bill. The bill also establishes a Moon to Mars program office, which will allow NASA to better coordinate its efforts to send astronauts beyond low Earth orbit. While the bill's human exploration provisions receive the majority of attention, it's important to remember that NASA has a broad mission, and this bill provides tools and authorities to carry out this mission. This bill authorizes important science missions and instruments to explore the solar system and answer fundamental questions about the universe. The legislation directs NASA's research efforts to help create safer, faster commercial air travel across this country. This bill also directs the National Space Council to prepare a report on China's space capacities and recommend a strategy to Congress on how best to maintain U.S. leadership in space exploration. The bill before us is not the NASA reauthorization the Republicans on this committee would have offered if we were the majority. However, I recognize we are in the minority, and the legislative process offers opportunities to improve the legislation. In the days since this bill's introduction, I've heard from a wide range of advocates representing all aspects of space exploration, both praising and raising concerns about the bill. I want to assure them I intend to continue working to ensure that the House-authored NASA authorization bill is the best product we can put forward that balances NASA's priorities and resources. Thank you, Chairwoman Horn, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? Mr. Christ.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to strike the last word. And I would first like to thank the chair, you, Madam Chair, and the ranking member, Babin, for their tireless work, their leadership in crafting a comprehensive and bipartisan NASA Authorization Act. This bill includes some great things for Florida, our space program, and for our country. For example, the bill sets a date of no later than 2033 for humans to orbit Mars and reaffirms the goal of having humans land on the surface of Mars. It creates a Moon to Mars program to establish a framework for missions to Mars. It extends the life of the International Space Station to allow for continued research and development in microgravity, For Florida, it authorizes the completion of the second mobile launcher at Kennedy Space Center, sets a launch cadence for 2 flights per year from Kennedy Space Center, and supports the SLS, Orion, and ground system suppliers and workforce in Florida. And the bill sets a strong path forward for science, aeronautics, and education. However, I have heard from many commercial shareholders in the state of Florida and around our country that the bill was written, would severely limit commercial competition and participation in the Moon to Mars program, something that has understandably caused a lot of heartburn for a lot of people. But I thank the Chair for working with me over the last few days to try and address these concerns. We're not there yet, but I am optimistic we will be soon. So in the interest of keeping the bill moving forward, I ask that you continue working with me to address these concerns before the bill is considered in the full committee, and I seek your counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Christ. And as the point has been made by several individuals, I think that everyone should rest assured that this is the process of how we get to a good bill with bipartisan support that will support NASA. Would anyone else wish to be recognized to speak? Mr. Waltz.
Thank you, Chairwoman Horn. And I also want to thank you and Chairwoman Johnson, ranking members Lucas and Babin for their leadership on space issues and their work on this bill. And it is important for the legislative process to remain bipartisan, absolutely. In the House, it's important for this bill to be signed into law. Obviously, but again, worth stating, the directives, the resources, the authorities in this bill envision a long-term national commitment to human exploration, both the Moon and Mars, which is a priority for me, for my district that's just north of Mr. Posey at Cape Canaveral. But in addition to deep space exploration, the bill provides a vision for the ISS, NASA's science, aeronautics, technology, and STEM education programs. However, I do share the concerns that have been expressed today by my colleagues, by the administrator in his letter, by Administrator Bridenstine in his letter to the committee yesterday. One of my concerns in a matter of process is there was not enough time between the introduction of this bill and this markup to receive adequate feedback, in our humble opinion, from the committee, from stakeholders on the amendments that would have led to better agreement on some of the more difficult issues. Secondly, I do have concerns with the changes to the Human Lunar Lander program and the implication of those changes to competition, to the architecture, to the broad agency announcement, and the timing of the development. And without more flexibility for NASA than currently provided for the Lunar Lander program, sufficient investment in Artemis, which will produce technological advancement and engagement with our commercial partners, may be in jeopardy. I am hopeful to receive the commitment of the chairwoman to address this concern in the full committee markup. And then thirdly, I have concerns with the unintended consequences to the Gateway program with some ambiguous language in the bill as written. Gateway is a critical program. It's an important program, particularly to the Kennedy Space Center, but it's important to meeting a number of our goals in space as a country, particularly on the national security front, in addition to lunar exploration with reusable rockets and in addition to reaching Mars. Further, I do support the administration's pursuit of landing the next man and the first woman on the Moon by 2024. I think that's a critical goal, and the final product of this authorization should not undermine that goal. The Artemis mission serves a strategic purpose for the United States, and it is critical to maintaining our predominance versus our adversaries, China and Russia, that are taking this domain very seriously. The Chinese are acting incredibly aggressively, and we must have that same sense of urgency. So while this bill represents progress towards our common goals, I do look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle over the next 2 weeks to address these issues and to review the President's FY21 budget request, which is imminent for NASA. Thank you, Chairwoman Horn. I appreciate your work on this, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Waltz. Anyone else wish to be recognized? Mr. Perlmutter, you're recognized.
Thank you, and I move to strike the last word. I'm pleased to see us here today to advance 5666, the NASA Authorization Act of 2020, which I am proud to co-sponsor. As all my colleagues know, supporting NASA and our aerospace industries is one of my top priorities. Colorado has some of the best minds, companies, and capabilities in the aerospace industry. We have one of the country's largest space economies because we have just about everything in our state, from the strong scientific research community to small, medium, and large commercial space companies which work across the civil and defense communities. That's why I've been such a strong supporter on this committee for NASA and, importantly, for getting our astronauts to Mars by 2033. And I did hear the chairwoman say that these were goals, and if we get to the moon before 2028, that's great, and if we get to Mars after 2033, that's okay too. Well, I have to disagree with her on that one. We need to be there by 2033. We need this concrete goal for us to all work towards, because this is a complicated undertaking requiring NASA to lead a team of public, private, and international partners to get this done. This bill will create a Moon to Mars program at NASA with the explicit goal of landing humans on Mars as soon as practicable and a human mission to orbit Mars by 2033, if not sooner. Exploration is in our DNA as Americans and as humans. We don't necessarily know where our exploration will take us, but the benefits we've seen right back here on Earth from our investment in exploration over the last half century has been tremendous. We have a skilled and driven workforce we are investing in, and the inspiration for the next generation will open new doors for new technologies and answering new questions we can't even imagine today. I appreciate the attention Chairwoman Horn and Ranking Member Babin, as well as Chairwoman Johnson and Ranking Member Lucas, for making this human mission to Mars a focus for the NASA and this bill. And I thank my friend, the administrator, for his interest in this particular subject as well. I've always said I'm fine with testing out the technologies and capabilities we need at the moon, as long as we keep our goals and our eyes on Mars. I think this bill keeps this framework in place as we're all reviewing the bill with our stakeholders over the next 2 weeks. I look forward to learning more about the best way to structure these lunar efforts to support the commercial space industry, who are important partners as we go back to the moon and on to Mars. I will have a couple of amendments that I hope to offer later that I think will enhance the bill. And I just want to thank the chairwoman and the ranking member for the breadth of subjects addressed, including cleaning up the debris in space, as well as STEM education, propulsion mechanisms, and space weather, which is something we addressed in this committee just a couple of weeks ago. And so I thank you for your efforts on this. I know it's a process to do this bill, but there is a lot of agreement on this committee, and I know this bill will advance past the floor and get on to the Senate. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Perlmutter. And it wouldn't quite be a hearing in this subcommittee without your bumper sticker, so, yeah, just in case. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? Okay. We'll now proceed with amendments in the order of the roster. The first amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Brooks. Mr. Brooks, you're recognized to offer an amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 21 of the bill, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 1. Amendment to
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading without objection, so ordered. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're
On
recognized for
page
5
21 of the bill, paragraph I, it states, to the extent funding permits, the administrator shall maintain 2 competing integrated crewed Mars landing ascent system design concepts through the critical design review milestone, at which point the administrator shall make a selection of the system to be utilized in the first human Mars landing mission. I believe that it's probably best to allow the administrator to have 2 or more, and as such, this amendment adds the phrasing "at least" in front of the word "to." I believe in competition. I believe in diversity of ideas, and the more ideas, quite frankly, that are presented to the administrator, the better the chance that we have a good one that will work.
Is there further, thank you, Mr. Brooks. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Okay. Sorry. Oh, if no, the vote occurs on this amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Okay. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Perlmutter. He is recognized to offer an amendment.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 2.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Perlmutter, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I move to strike the last word, and I rise to offer a simple amendment to support NASA's commercial cargo program serving the International Space Station. Initially awarded in 2008, the commercial resupply services have proven to be a successful partnership between NASA and private industry to develop critical capabilities. With the ending of the shuttle program, NASA faced the challenge of how to deliver both crew and cargo to the International Space Station. The cargo program has proven very successful, with NASA supporting the development of these technologies and new technologies and allowing NASA to purchase commercial cargo delivery services to meet its needs. The first phase of the contract successfully partnered with SpaceX and then Orbital ATK. A second phase was competed and is underway with SpaceX and now Northrop Grumman and Sierra Nevada. I offer this amendment today to reaffirm this committee's support for the success of this program and ensure NASA's continued commitment to the commercial cargo program through these multiple providers, which all have a diverse set of capabilities. The International Space Station is an important asset to allow our astronauts to operate in space, conduct important scientific research, and demonstrate new technologies and capabilities. And my amendment shows our support for this successful commercial partnership to serve the ISS. And with that, I urge my colleagues support the amendment, and I yield back.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the vote occurs on the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Perlmutter. He is recognized to offer an amendment.
Madam Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 3. Amendment to
I
HR.
ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Perlmutter, you're recognized for 5 minutes to explain your amendment.
Thank you. I move to strike the last word. I'm offering this second amendment to support continued research and partnership in the area of space resources. In the past decade, there's been a growing interest in situ resource utilization, or the practice of using materials found or manufactured on other astronomical objects, including the Moon and Mars, to replace materials that would otherwise have to be brought from Earth. As NASA works on its Moon to Mars exploration program, supporting the extraction, understanding, and utilization of materials in space will be an important capability and could lead to more affordable and safer human spaceflight missions. While federal agencies, academic institutions, and the private sector have worked to advance research in this field, there is no central hub to support the development of foundational science and technology and options for using space resources. My amendment will have NASA study the possible establishment of a research institute on space resources to coordinate this research. I've had this bill with my colleague from Colorado, Scott Tipton, for the last several years, and I'm pleased to advance this effort today. The study of space resources is one of the many exciting frontiers ahead for deep space exploration and ensuring coordinated research and technology development in this field. I urge all of my colleagues to support my amendment, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Perlmutter. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the vote occurs on this amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Byer. He is recognized to offer his amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment 4.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. I recognize Mr. Byer for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Well, I'd like to thank the chair and the staff for their hard work putting together this bill. I have language I want to add to build on the base text. So although the U.S. has long led global aviation community, NASA continues to play a vital role in maintaining the competitiveness of the civil aviation industry by conducting research outside the normal economic and risk criteria that govern commercial investments. So while electric and hybrid electric propulsion and flight is considered the next frontier, NASA has only just begun initial research into energy-efficient aircraft and electric propulsion technologies. My staff has been working on for some time on how to further advance efficient flight, propulsion, and airframe concepts, and what is needed to actually deploy and integrate these necessary next steps into the future of aviation. So I've included some help language based on our discussion with the agencies and folks in the field. This language incorporates a research approach for sustainable aviation to ensure that airframe concepts and test flights are included, as well as the coordination and guidance that manufacturers have said that they would need. I've also included language about reducing noise emissions as one of the focus areas for sustainable aviation. Noise complaints have been an ongoing issue in metro areas surrounding major airports. In fact, we have a quiet skies caucus, especially since the FAA revised flight plans nationwide under its next-gen plan, which uses more precise satellite-based navigation. So flights take off at lower altitudes on more frequent schedules and more concentrated narrow paths. In fact, they go over the same house every 30 seconds. My constituents tell me. So noise levels exceeding 55 decibels quickly become intolerable with this increased frequency of planes overhead. So it can cause community annoyance, disrupt sleep, adversely affect academic performance of kids, reduce productivity of local businesses, and could even increase the risk for cardiovascular disease. So the tools needed to analyze the noise as well as the noise reduction technology is very much valued by industry, but the research is going to have to be driven initially by NASA with their wonderful aeronautics people. However, I would like to continue working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, so I hope this to be a very unanimous bipartisan amendment. So I'd like to withdraw my amendment today and continue working with my friends who will reintroduce this at the full committee markup. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Byer, and we will look forward to working with you on that. The chair, okay. Next amendment, did you,
I was gonna
I'm
say-
sorry, did you want to?
I was just going to say, I make the
Yes.
commitment to work with him.
Excellent.
No, yeah.
Perfect. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentlelady from Virginia, Ms. Wexton. She's recognized to offer an amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 5. Amendment to
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading without objection. So ordered. Ms. Wexton, you're recognized for 5 minutes to explain your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for yielding me time to explain this bipartisan amendment. The Space Grant Program has been a vital partner in every state to advance STEM education and space and aeronautics outreach. The program has successfully reached out to students, teachers, and the general public for over 30 years. Virginia's Space Grant Program has placed more than 7,500 STEM students in paid internships across the public and private sector and has awarded more than 2,000 education scholarships, including at 2-year and 4-year institutions. And the numbers in my colleagues' districts and states are just as impressive. In Texas, for example, more than 1,000 students have been awarded STEM scholarships and more than 24,000 teachers have participated in trainings provided by Space Grant funding. In Oklahoma, over 4,500 K-12 students and teachers participate in Space Grant programs, and 57% of overall undergraduate participants entered the STEM fields after graduation. And as I mentioned, the general public also benefits from Space Grant. And last year, about 14,000 people participated in hands-on activities through the Space Grant affiliate Orlando Science Center in Florida. Each Space Grant program has 3 components: research, education, and outreach, but how each state Space Grant Consortium meets these goals is dependent on NASA's mission priorities and each state's STEM workforce and development priorities. While the program has been reauthorized on numerous occasions, it hasn't been substantially updated in many years. As a result, the underlying statute has many provisions that are either outdated or were never enacted over the decades. My amendment seeks to update the underlying statute to better reflect current practices and policies of the Space Grant Program. The amendment mirrors the text of a bill that was included unanimously in the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, that passed the NASA reauthorization bill from late last year. The bill makes some key updates to the underlying statute. The amendment keeps the original intent of this program as a joint federal and state endeavor. To that end, each state matches on a one-to-one basis the federal share. The amendment simply ensures that the grant program equally balances the needs of NASA with individual state STEM workforce needs. The amendment establishes a set percentage allocation for funding distribution that puts 85% of annual appropriations for space grant to the base state grants for them to run competitive programs in their states, 10% to NASA program administration costs, and 5% to special grant programs designated by NASA. The amendment codifies current NASA practice by protecting equal funding distribution of base awards to the Space Grant Consortia and includes a NASA-requested separate allocation for Guam and the Virgin Islands, and modernizes the authorization by cleaning up older, obsolete items and updating the text to reflect current practices across the program. Importantly, this amendment was drafted with input from the space grant community and the broader space grant community, including the Space Grant Consortia and my state, is strongly supportive of this text. As we have discussed on this committee, it's important that we do everything we can to support students entering STEM fields, and Space Grant is a vital part of how we continue this work. I thank my colleague, Congressman Mo Brooks, for joining me in advocating for the Space Grant and for offering this amendment. Now, Madam Chair, I do understand that probably not everyone has had the opportunity to review with a fine-tooth comb this 11-page amendment, and I haven't, although I haven't heard any opposition to it. Given the expedited timeline that we're moving forward and the number of amendments, I want to give everyone more opportunity to review the text and what this amendment would actually do. So at this time, I will withdraw my amendment with the hopes that we can get it before the full committee when we do move this bill forward.
Thank you, Ms. Wexton. We'll look forward to working with you on that. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, we're not. Excuse me, Madam Chair. I look forward to working with you going forward. Thank you.
The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Waltz. He is recognized to offer an amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 6.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading of the amendment. Without objection, so ordered. I recognize Mr. Waltz for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My amendment allows NASA to use its procurement contracts to acquire commodities and services to meet not only NASA requirements, but also, importantly, those requirements of private, commercial, and non-federal government users of NASA centers. There's precedent for this policy within the federal government. My amendment is parallel to the authorities that the Department of Defense possesses under Title 10 of the U.S. Code. It also builds off current law, which allows NASA to sell commodities and facilities to non-federal partners, but only if they are deemed in excess. This amendment expands that authority to the procurement process, which would create an efficiency for NASA and reduce costs for the taxpayer. And I view this as complementary to the evolving relationship between NASA and private partners, many of which have a growing presence at NASA centers. This is an important relationship that's driving competition and technological advancement. This policy has been recommended by NASA, reviewed by OMB, and submitted to this committee for consideration. The same language was introduced by Senators Rubio, Rick Scott, and Cornyn in the Senate, and included in the Senate authorization during the Commerce Committee markup. However, although this policy has been socialized and reviewed, this amendment underscores my concerns with the timing and the process of this markup. So since the timing did not allow for a legitimate and thorough dialogue between the majority and minority on this amendment, my understanding is that the chairwoman is requesting me to withdraw the amendment and has committed to working with me on a compromise of this policy at the full committee level. With that assurance from the chairwoman, I withdraw the amendment, not due to policy concerns, but to provide more time to reach an agreement. And thank you, Ranking Members Lucas and Babin, for liaising these conversations. I withdraw my amendment, and I yield my time.
Thank you, Mr. Waltz. Look forward to working with you as well on your amendment so that we can get to agreement. The next amendment on the roster is also offered by the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Waltz. He is recognized to offer an amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number
I
7.
ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. Recognize the gentleman from Florida for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. With a renewed focus on space exploration by the federal government, which I personally think is fantastic, and commercial partners, the Kennedy Space Center is seeing significant investment and a dramatically increased launch cadence. With that, a real property development, and launching rockets obviously require complicated and heavy freight movement. The freight movement on this scale, the scale that we're seeing in Florida, puts a significant strain on the infrastructure connecting highways and ports to Cape Canaveral. I deem it incredibly important to maintain multiple access routes to the Cape, not only to reduce risk and congestion, but also to reduce the cost of transportation. Additionally, access routes to the Cape position surrounding communities to attract space industry investment. This is particularly important for Volusia County in my district, which is strategically positioned to the north of the Cape to attract and attain top space companies. An important artery from Volusia to the Cape is the Haulover Canal Bridge. The Haulover Bridge is owned, maintained, and inspected by the Kennedy Space Center. My amendment requires NASA to study the importance of maintaining multiple access routes to the center, including the Haulover Bridge, to the nation's civil and commercial space operations. This analysis is important to Volusia County for economic development purposes and for difficult budgetary decisions on maintenance schedules. I want to thank the chairwoman and ranking member for working with me on this amendment. I look forward to its inclusion in the underlying bill. Thank you, and I yield my time.
Thank you, Mr. Waltz. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the vote occurs on the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Posey. You're recognized to offer your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a second-degree amendment to my amendment at the desk.
Okay. The clerk will report the amendment, or the second-degree amendment.
Amendment number 8.
Without objection, I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. Recognize the gentleman for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Okay, council is saying we really don't need this. They've already circulated the original, and it's a technical amendment. It references U.S. Code 20301.
Mr. Posey, if you would indulge me for just a moment, just for the clarity of the other members on the committee, it's a revision, a revised amendment, not a...
Correct.
Okay, just clarifying. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's technical in nature. It references U.S. Code 20301 versus Section 101 that was originally filed in the amendment. It simply makes technical changes to the bill by inserting Artemis instead of MC1, MC2, et cetera. So with these changes, it will mirror the Senate version, and I want to again thank Representative Chris for helping me on this.
Excellent. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, I seeing none, the vote occurs on the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. A reporting quorum being present, I move the Space and Aeronautics Subcommittee of Science, Space, and Technology Committee report H.R. 5666 as amended to the full committee with a recommendation that the bill be approved. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. I ask unanimous consent that the staff be authorized to make any necessary technical and conforming changes to the bill. Without objection, so ordered. Members will have 2 subsequent calendar days in which to submit supplemental, minority, or additional views on the measure. I want to thank, before we close, I want to thank the members for their attendance, and again, thank Ranking Member Babin, Chairwoman Johnson, Ranking Member Lucas, and all the members of this committee for their hard work, and look forward to working with you on some of these outstanding issues as we move into markup on the full committee. And we're adjourned.